Hi, this is Roger Green, executive producer and host of the Surfing the Mesh Tsunami podcast. This week, over the holiday week, we will be sharing 5 conversations from episode 27, our coverage of last month's The Liver Meeting 2024. This conversation covers 2 topics. First, I asked the panelists to share one word that describes their reactions to the Liver Meeting in toto. While the words are different, everybody conveys excitement and enthusiasm about the energy at the meeting and all the good work that was done there. Specifically, they focused on the phase 3 semaglutide trial in MASH, which was the highlight of the meeting, and proved that semaglutide does, in fact, reduce fibrosis if taken for a long enough period of time, in this case, 72 weeks. The rest of this conversation talks about that result itself and what it will mean for patients. As you listen, you'll hear all of our enthusiasm, which was infectious within ourselves, and we hope to those of you who are listening to this episode. What I asked everybody to do to prepare for this is think about one word or one very short phrase that describes how you felt about the meeting. And we'll know who prepared how quickly by how quickly they jump in and say, well, here, my word is, so they don't lose it to somebody else. But brave one, go first.
Mike Betel.
Expanding horizons.
Please elaborate.
There's so many great things that came forward at this meeting. I think it just broadens our future in so many ways. I was really excited this year by all the data and the communication, the interrelationships, multidisciplinary, all of it. It was just a really great meeting.
Jeff McIntyre.
Yeah, I'll build on that as growth was the word that came up for me in terms of the field growing. We've seen more engagement from patients in the conference itself, which has led to growth in patient engagement and growth of the patient's involvement there as well. And then I think with some of the things I'm sure we'll get into in terms of readouts and some of the sessions, I think we've seen really growth into either exploration into areas like lifestyle management and the connection to metabolic, or growth in we may get some new medications approved out of this. And so for me, it's growth all around.
Okay. Now we've heard from the patients. Everybody else be brave.
Naim Alkhouri.
Here comes the cynical hepatologist. For me, it was semaglutide improves fibrosis. This is how the meeting felt. That was probably the most important thing that we learned at the meeting. And it was really, good to see for our patients. And hopefully this will become another, weapon we have to treat this disease next year. But I would say that was the biggest news for me. And I think, that will have immediate relevance to our patients.
Michelle Long.
Yeah, I'll go next. I would say momentum. It felt really positive, like we're all moving together in the field. There have been some meetings in times past where it's been everyone getting together. We can do this, right? Come on, we got this. Those feelings are gone. That doubt is gone. And it's more of, how do we build this together and where do we want to take the field? We have choices now. So that was really exciting, I think, to hear and to kind of feel that energy.
Jörn, I guess that leaves you.
Jörn Schattenberg.
Yeah, I would say to the end, happening now. We've been working in this for quite some time, and it happened in 2024 that we've seen 2 phase 3 trials read out. Actually, in the parallel session on Tuesday, the last thing of the meeting, we had 6 different MOAs looking at improvement of this liver disease. And, as the colleague said, momentum, innovation, it's fascinating to see these different approaches we're taking today.
So my word came from a slightly different direction, which is effervescent. And by that, I meant not only all the good things that you folks are talking about, but the way the meeting and the attendees felt. It was almost like a champagne bottle popped and all this positive energy came out. Not only was the meeting great, but people were just amazingly positive and energized. I've never seen that many smiles. I've certainly never seen that many smiles in a liver meeting before. Now, admittedly, I missed Milan, but I haven't seen half that many smiles in a liver meeting before. And I think it speaks to everything y'all were talking about. A remarkably positive experience. So with that, why don't we start diving into some of the specific presentations and events that got your attention? Again, brave one, go first.
I'm happy to go through the Essence trial. I think, as I said, this was kind of the most exciting news at the meeting. This is the phase 3 study with semaglutide obesity dose 2.4 milligram weekly. And this was part 1 that included 800 patients that were randomized to semaglutide versus placebo with the focus on F3 patients. So about 2/3 had F3. And it was a positive study. We had MASH MASH resolution in approximately 63% with a 29% delta from placebo. So if you think about number needed to treat, you need to treat about 3 patients to achieve MASH resolution in 1, which is a very good number to treat in medicine. This was with 72 weeks of treatment. And then the fibrosis improvement data that was achieved in 37% with semaglutide with the delta of about 14.5%. So this will translate into a number needed to treat of 7 patients to achieve fibrosis regression. So this was, very welcome news for our patients. Obviously, semaglutide has 2 indications for obesity and diabetes already. So I think it'll be easy to incorporate in our clinics. And this was kind of the last missing piece. I mean, semaglutide induces weight loss. It improves A1C and dyslipidemia and cardiovascular outcomes. MASH resolution has been shown. The big question was, is it going to work on fibrosis? And the answer is yes. Having said that, I think, that delta of 14.5% leaves a lot of room for improvement. So this was, positive news all around. It's good for our patients to have more options, but also it's good for other pharma companies and drug developers to understand that we still need other drugs to be brought to, phase 3 trials and to patients eventually to take that delta from about 15% to hopefully 50, 60% in the future. So really, in my mind, there was no downside. I think, we had a few unanswered questions after the presentation, the way that kind of like people that didn't have a second liver biopsy were accounted for in the study. So we will see more once we have the full publication. But as expected, there was improvement in liver enzymes and some biomarkers of fibrosis like VCTE and ELF. And what was also important for me was the baseline characteristics based on NITs for patients. And if you look at them, they're very similar to what we saw in the Maestro-NASH trial with resmetirom in terms of the liver stiffness and the ELF score. So to me, that validated the criteria that we developed to select patients for treatment with MASH F2, F3, that, you're getting the same, regardless of the mechanism of action and the slight variations in the inclusion-exclusion criteria. So I felt that study was very rich and very important, and it will have great implications next year.
So I should say that Michelle looks virtually effervescent, or did while Naim was talking. Anything you want to add to that? And then the rest of you?
No, just that, of course, I've been through these results a number of times, and it's just really nice to see them come together like this. Of course, this is part 1 of a study that will go on and needs to go on and show clinical benefit. So this is interim analysis that could be the basis for accelerated approval. We'll see. But I think overall, super positive and in line with what, of course, I had hoped to see. But it was nice. We all know that things don't always play out as one hopes or one think are possible. So it was really nice to see it come together like this. It added to, I completely agree with your opening statement, Naim. It really added to, I think, a lot of the positive energy for the meeting, because I think people were really excited to see such nice, clear results presented as another option that adds to the mix for our patients.
I would add to this. I mean, we came from a way where people were doubting this could be a positive trial because phase 2 didn't show the fibrosis improvement, right? Different dose, different timing, so clearly different. But the expectations were excelled. And the nice thing for me in that study is that you see such a robust decrease in the NITs we're going to be using in clinics to monitor these patients. Naim said that the baseline NITs were comparable to the patients he's seen in clinic. And then if you look at the NITs that have been presented, there was a VCTE drop of 20%, ELF goes down by 0.6%, ALT decreased, and those are measures we think are clinically meaningful and relevant for the patient. ALT decrease was something like 40%. That's going to be the markers we use to monitor these patients once we put them on that dose of drug to treat liver disease. So I think it's all there.
Roger, I'm going to jump in and kind of take a little bit of this as my session as well, because I think it was the defining session, arguably one of the defining sessions for AASLD, the big news on the Essence trial coming out. And I think, from our perspective, I do appreciate Naim's explanation of kind of the science behind it and where it sets us up for. But I think there's also kind of a patient and political place that this sets us up, which is just as important. When you look at kind of our history in working in MASH and liver disease, there are these certain mile markers, that we can look back at, the approval of resmetirom, the difficulties of OCA, all these, there's these particular places. And I really do feel like this is the next stage of growth, for us, going back to my theme that I said at the start of the podcast, is that when we look back, now we will get out of, as this continues, if we get the accelerated approval, as Michelle said, we had another asset from a different company that got breakthrough therapy designation. Now we're really beginning to pick up speed and steam. We're getting away from just one medication for a certain population that's already in the system and beginning to look at medications that are already widely distributed. There's a movement from the White House, I think at the end of last week, to get the GLP-1s reimbursed under Medicare and Medicaid, which would tremendously shift the ground underneath us as well. And it's just a super exciting, moment. If we can get all of these various parts coming together like they seem to be coalescing, then it's really going to change lives, frankly. It's going to change the field and going to change the impact for liver patients specifically.
I would add to Jeff's comments about the milestones too and say that it does offer hope. I mean, we hear that word a lot from patients, but I was involved with the hepatitis landscape from the very beginning too. And like Roger said, I can remember those moments when things progressed, exponentially almost. And so having options, now having hopefully soon two options, means that there'll be more to come and more choices for physicians and patients. So it's all really great news.
I agree. And then I'm going to have a small cloud in the sky. But here's the good news first. I think I've said this forever, including at least 19 times on this podcast, maybe 95 times, that the way markets develop is that when you have one agent, the question is whether to treat. When you have two agents, the question is which one to use. And you step right past the whether to treat question. So should Sema get accelerated approval, we will then have two agents and a completely different question. It becomes, okay, we need to treat now with which one? And that will change the entire conversation for everybody. And if you take a look at the history of pharma markets, that's when they first start to take off. So this will be a big moment in terms of treating MASH separately.
Sir, I was going to say too, again, back to the hepatitis, when it was just one company and then it was two companies when we started that, it's the size of the pie, the investment pie too. And so, when there's two companies that are trying to, I'll say grow the market, but really trying to educate and raise awareness, it's just doubles the opportunities to impact more people.
I agree. And that is the first step, in fact, in growing the market is educating. So I completely agree with that.
And now back to Roger.
We hope you've enjoyed this recording. If you have any questions or comments about the content of this conversation or the entire episode, please put them in the review section of the page from which you downloaded this conversation, or send an email to questions@surfingmash.com. Over the rest of the holiday, we'll be sharing conversations from episode 25, in which Maru Ranella went over expert recommendations on use of resmetirom, and also a conversation Jörn and I recorded with Scott Friedman last summer that never made it to air. Plenty to listen to while you're at home and away. And we'll be back in January covering MASH-tag and then moving into our new 2025 Surfing MASH V2.0 format. Take care, stay safe, surf on. We'll see you on the podcast. Bye-bye now.